What is up, everyone? Good to see some of you a second time today. Hanging out here waiting for Jerome Powell's announcement on keeping the rates the same. He's not going to cut it. Come on now. Yeah, we're going to wait for Jerome Powell. He comes, the announcement is at 2 p.m. And then you've got Jerome Powell on the mic at 2:30 p.m. So you're stuck with me until then. True Dukel's in the house. Back to ya. Mark says, what's up, Klaus and crypto community? Jesus, I had to put my glasses on to read the rest of it. It says, hoping for some dovish comments. Dude, I don't know, man. I dug a little bit deeper into this today. And I gotta be honest with you. With housing not breaking, I mean, this is just hard. It's really, that's what she said, right? It is. It's really, really hard because I'm looking at this entire thing and I'm going, gosh, if housing doesn't break, Jerome's just going to keep his foot on the old, the gas pedal here, or foot on our necks, however you want to look at it, and just keep hitting us. So I don't know, man. I'm kind of, it sucks. Acid says, if no rate cut, do we see a price drop? Honestly, Acid, and for everyone watching, thank you for the question, by the way, Acid. Dig the name, my guy. Honestly, the market knows. The market knows we're not going to get a rate cut. Like, we all know it's not going to happen. He's going to keep rates the same, right? What the market's pricing that in. What the market's going to pay attention to and what the market will react to is when he goes on the mic, if he's an ass or if he's totally cool about stuff. That's what this is all about. The price stuff, it's priced in for the rate decision, unless they lower it. If they lower it, we're going to be going green if they lower it. But I seriously doubt it. So my thinking is they're going to pause, and that's the consensus right now, that they're going to pause. We just hope Jerome is not an ass. Hawk hanging out with us. I'm sitting here not even getting the live stream ready because I'm emailing the Hawk, just throwing it out there. I'm like sitting there and I'm writing an email and I'm like, oh crap, dude, I'm not even getting ready. So it was kind of funny. X Factor says he might raise rates a quarter. You want to see what the odds are? I've got them right here for you from the CME group. Right now, chances are 0.1%. 0.1% that he'll lower it, 99.9% and keeping it the same, with nothing right now in the money regards to raising. If he raises the rates, this is going to go so freaking red, and shorts are going to freaking be eating steak dinners for weeks, man. Aunt Lynn's hanging out with us in the house. What's up, Aunt Lynn? Says, Brother Klaus, I've been bringing the juice out of Turbo this morning. Girlfriend, you keep touching it, and you keep ringing it, and you keep making bank on it. Because, for real, we talked about this in the earlier one, Aunt Lynn, is don't be emotional. Don't be married to positions. Just make your money, man. Make your hits. Have more wins than losses, dude. Ty Zero says, try doing an interview with Dixon. Seriously, they would have to pay me to do the interview because I've got better shit to do with my time. I would rather run. Like, I'm just throwing it out there, okay? I would rather run, all right, at night, 12 hours, than to do the interview. And, like, just throwing it out here. So I was hanging out. I was hanging out at the racetrack. If you want to know what it's like this up on the screen. It's like tent city, my guy. People sleeping, running, sleeping, running. Lots of fun. If you want to know what I want to do, it's exactly that. Salamander, supporting the channel. Mucho, thank you, Salamander. Everyone gives Salamander a big thanks because, as is customary, we say thank you to everyone supporting the channel. This is a team effort. Salamander says, I'm melting faces on XRP at 10,000. Dude, it's been rough, man. It has been rough, dude. Like, seriously, price action has been, it's been hard. Like, even me doing, like, my choo-choo train, like, things, I'm sitting here going, God, this might be a little painful. Like, it seriously, because, like, I get it. Some things are moving, and when I've been looking at the charts, look at this. So, this is over the last 7 days. You can see the majority of stuff is in the red. Toncoin in the green, just throwing that out there. TRX, again, not going to talk about that, but most of the stuff is deep in the red. It's been pretty rough. Aunt Lynn says, one of the gifts of being old is that I have the patience of a Saint Claus. I can wait for my setup. Good for you. And that's the whole thing. Is like it all depends on where you're at in life and what your tolerance for risk is and how you like to make your plays. I like to hit it and quit it. I love to hit it and quit it. And I know a lot of you out there are like, bro, what the hell are you talking about? I like to make my plays. I like to make my money, and I like to move on. And then I also like to enjoy my time. That's the thing. That's the thing. For me, time is worth more than any money being made. Nathan Stevens says, is it time for takeoff or is it launch delayed again? Seriously, Jerome's going to take a pause, man. Jerome's going to take a pause. We're going to be hearing from Jerome in 11 minutes, thanks to Garmin. Jerome's going to take a pause. We just don't want him to be an ass. Like, seriously, the problem for this, it comes back to this. The index for shelter rose in May, up 0.4% for the fourth consecutive month. Dude, if housing doesn't frickin' break, rates in the U.S. are going to stay high for a while. What might happen here, and we're seeing it more and more and more, okay? As countries lower rates, as regions lower rates, those countries are going to get a head start on growth and development because money is just going to be cheaper to grow in the grand scale of things. The U.S. may become a laggard in development if we wait for the Fed rate cut to come in September. I mean, that's a few months away. That's kind of rough right there. So just kind of take it for what you will. If housing doesn't break, the U.S. is going to keep rates for higher. Housing is just not breaking at all. And that's the rough part about this whole thing. Trix is in and out quickly. Yeah, seriously, make your money and go, man. Have more wins than losses. Like, you gotta play the odds on this stuff. You gotta play the stats on this. X Factor, no worries, got you covered on there. Patrick G says, I think there's a cut election around the corner. Patrick, you know what? You're absolutely right with that. The odds, Patrick, and I have them on the screen, is a 61% chance, 70% chance when you take the cumulative, okay? 70% chance that you're going to have a cut before the election in the September contract. That's the 18th of September. So mark it on your calendars right now. Make a note that the 18th of September is right now the odds on money for a rate cut. Now, will action be juicy right like when it happens? Maybe. But what if Jerome starts giving us some inklings or some encouragement? Then we might see the rally start even sooner. But the thing is, countries like Canada, Denmark, the EU, right, the zone out there, they're already ahead by cutting rates. They're already doing a much better job. For instance, my viewers, for the viewers across the pond, y'all just had an inflation rate. Please, someone correct me if I'm wrong. 2.2 or 2.4, I think it was, which is really, really good. Now, has it really hit the consumer yet? Completely, no. We know that. But like statistically speaking, 2.2 or 2.4 is really good, especially when the United States is rolling here at 3.3. We've been 3.5, 3.4, 3.3. This ain't going down fast enough. We're on date number 4, and she's not even like playing with it. That's not cool. You need a sharper decline than this. So what's going to happen is this, okay? We're going to get a pause right now, and Jerome is going to tell us about housing. I will put money on it. I will put insane freaking amounts of money on it. He's going to blame housing, and he's going to talk about housing needing to break. And the problem is housing can't break right now because the inventories aren't there. Building supplies are still too high. Labor costs are still too high. And energy costs and fuel costs are way too high. So builders and loans are way too high. So builders that don't have a cash basis to operate on, or firms that like to use loan capital to make their stuff going, they're all waiting. The only players that are playing right now are cash players because money is just very, very expensive. Klaus Fudclown, love the haters on the channel, says, insiders know that good news is coming, hence BTC is close to 70,000 already. No. BTC is becoming the hedge against U.S. banks. Didn't we see BTC pump with U.S. bank action in March? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Remember when Silicon Valley, Silvergate, those banks went? That's when BTC started pumping. Why? As a hedge against government screwing you over. People love the store of value plays, man. People love the store of value play. But right now, we're looking at a lot of red in the last 7 days. Players not clawing their way back from the bloodbath that was Friday. Some of them getting pretty close, though, to breaking even. Cash is king, man. Cash is totally king. Oh, and I don't hate you either, dude. I seriously, I don't mind people not agreeing with me, so don't worry about that, guys. I seriously, I don't mind that at all. Toothpick Tony says, so what would be the bad for the market today? The bad for the market today would be Jerome Powell even mentioning the slightest effing mention of raising rates if things keep going the way they're going. All of a sudden, I'm telling you, that would be nasty for the market. Because right now, the market expectations are, hey, look, pause, but it's going to happen soon. You know, we can't let the Eurozone, we can't let Canada, we can't let Denmark, we can't let other countries get ahead when it comes to growth and development. That's all money and opportunity lost. So there's a tightrope to walk. Pre-election, man, I'm telling you, for all of you that have been saying the whole pre-election pump, that's your best chance. If not, it's got to go. Salamander supporting the channel. Everyone give Salamander a big thank you. Says, I have XRP. Look into Caspa and Jasmine. Yeah, we did. We checked out Caspa and Jasmine earlier. And what I was very interested in that is here. Let's see if I can pull it on down here. Here we go, Caspa. All right, over the last 7 days, getting pretty darn near close. I mean, it's only down 4%. ICP down 12.8. That was one. HBAR down 10.8. So Caspa really doing very well. I like that action. Stellar sitting at 36, not really doing too well. Dog with Hat down 18%. See, the more risk, the more reward. I know there's VeChain fans out there down 10%. Ouch, in the last 10 days. Notcoin, pay attention to that one. Just be careful. Jasmine, look at that. Break even basically in the last 7 days. So Salamander with 2 good calls right there. Bucking the channel. Toothpick Tony, no problem, my guy. Yeah, you just gotta follow the odds of the stuff. So you gotta follow the odds from the CME group, because the money is they're pretty spot on, man. Like they're really they've been like spot on, like really well. I will admit they sometimes have been a little bullish. They were a bullish group a couple months ago, but that really calmed down, especially when we saw the corrections in the crypto market and things starting to cool down. So we did see that with them. They were a little kind of bullish on the call. But right now, there's still a big chunk of money, though, that's saying, you know what? We might not have a rate cut all year. Dude, if that's the case through election time, through Christmas, you're going to have the United States behind financially by a huge margin. That would be giving some countries out there and some businesses in those countries, and, you know, think of the global where you would get the money from, right? You want to go somewhere where it's cheaper. That would give them 6 months of advantage to the United States. That's crazy. Trick says 3% will be the new interest floor. Yeah, the quarter to 25 basis points, I don't think you're going to get that action. I mean, money's not going to be cheap. Would I like to see the basis points around the 2 to 250? Yeah. I love 2 to 250. I think economies can work there. I think you just can't let the pendulum swing too crazy. You have to really let it glide into that and let, like, I don't want to say greed take over, but you want to keep it legit. You want to keep it cool. You don't want to let too much speculation happen. So I'm at 250, Trick. Let's see, says, you said Jasmine, now I'm listening. Jasmine is the Bitcoin of Japan. You know, I'm very interested in a bunch of different cryptos out there. But what I'm also interested in is knowing that there's always going to be something new entering the market. For real, if that's one of the things that, like, I'm seriously super excited about, is that you're always going to see some sort of innovation. You're always going to see some sort of new way of doing something, a new plan of attack and so forth. And I think that's exciting. I think the crypto market has done one thing, right? And it's done it correctly. It's showing you that, you know what, it's not going to give up and it's not going to completely go away. Which means you're always going to have innovation as long as there's some money throwing in there. More monkey businesses. Klaus, I never knew you were knocking out another one today. Yes, did a live stream earlier, did another one today. I feel pretty good. I gotta be honest with you. Nathan Stevens says, what's the call on 3 rate cuts this year? All right, 3 rate cuts this year. You are going to be getting very, very greedy. Let me get you to the December contract real quick. So 3 rate cuts. Your odds would be about 25% for 3 rate cuts this year. And that's the stars would have to align, the clouds would have to part. It would not only have to be raining money, it would have to be raining cabbage, it would have to be raining boobies. For the ladies out there, it'd have to be raining dongs. Why? Because they last longer than the males. Seriously, it would have to be raining Porsche Carrera GT3s. I mean, like, that's just the 3 is tough. One, we get a chance. All right? 1 rate cut, we get a chance. 3 is going to be tough, man. I think 3 is going to be tough. The big issue becomes is if we don't break housing, we're in a world of hurt, man. Seriously, your best odds are 1 rate cut. Housing is just too rough. All right, they're going to be coming out with the announcement here anytime now. I am going to keep refreshing it. And remember, this meeting is with economic projections, so you're going to see a lot of what these guys are thinking about over the next 3 months, and that's what's going to have to move the market, okay? Let's take a look right here. Here we go. I've got the PDF up on the screen. You ready? In support of his goals, decided to maintain. They took a pause. To support its goals, it has been a pause. They paused. Let me put that down in the chat. They paused. There you go. All right. They paused. 5.25% to 5.5%. So essentially, what they're saying is they need it to come down even more. They're not even going to touch it. Let me read it to you. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace. Job gains have remained strong and unemployment rate has remained low. Inflation has eased over the past year but remains elevated. That's pretty noteworthy right there. I'll agree to that. In recent months, there's been modest further progress towards their 2% goal. There you go. Pause. I mean, right now, Trick is the hawk and Trick is calling it, man. I mean, that's the deal. They paused, and I think we're all thinking the same thing. It all comes down to housing. Housing is just too expensive, and people need basic needs. Basic needs. Okay, who took me on the money? Come on. Who took me on the money that said they were going to cut, and I said, nope, they're going to pause? Come on, who took me on the money? Just pay up right now. Pay up. I'm going to eat my pretzels. Just pay up, dude. I'm telling you. Elevated is a bad word, Trick. I'm glad you caught on to that. Elevated is not good. These pretzels are good. And these pretzels are making me thirsty. Comment down below if you know where that's from. So right now, you've got elevated inflation in the housing market. You got rates staying up higher. I don't expect much to happen on this, right? It's price-wise. I don't think you're going to see the price from the obvious announcement here. You're going to hear it from him saying, hey, look, we might even have to raise rates if housing doesn't come in line. If he mentions anything about raising rates, you better get the baby powder out because it is going to be nasty. Let's go over just a couple things right here. Energy service. Electricity still remains high. That's not fun. Wrong chart right here. Let's see. Food is something that all of us... Food away from home is still way high. And for those of you watching, what food away from home is like restaurants, services, junk like that. Food away from home is still way up, dude. And that's a big problem as well because that's a consumer segment right now that is just getting squeezed hard. And honestly, that consumer segment was squeezed hard during the Rona, so it makes sense. Frankie Ortiz says, pay up. That's right. Didn't that call the pause? And it called the pause for a while. Salamander, a big thank you. And please thank Salamander for the support. Says, get rid of the Federal Reserve's not a government entity. Yeah, I got to agree with you because you know how like the Federal Reserve, Salamander, talks about supply and demand. And you know how they really talk about letting the markets kind of work themselves out and having to just nudge the markets just to make sure it stays like within like a functional parameter. Isn't nudging the market not really letting things work with supply and demand? Because isn't that nudging artificial? Salamander claimed the pretzels for Seinfeld. Well done. But yeah, I seriously, I mean, think about that principle. right? I mean, the Fed injects artificial money into markets, into economies. And that artificial money does mess with the supply and demand dynamic, doesn't it? So maybe when we start looking at the Fed, and I'm bringing this up because Salamander made the comment, and thank you for the support, by the way. I'm bringing it up because then doesn't that mean the Fed essentially like delays problems and stretches them out instead of letting us hit rock bottom and bouncing back up faster? Because think about it. If you lose your job, what do? You right away cut a lot of your spending at home. You look for a second job. You stop going out to eat. You don't, go to the strip club and look at boobies all the time. Like, you just don't. Maybe you don't go to the dispensary as often. Maybe you go once a week instead of twice a week. I don't know. My point is, when economic stuff happens, we make changes at home. Maybe we ask our wife or our husband to pick up extra shifts because we're slow on money. And that's supply and demand, right? That changes our spending. But with these companies and with the Fed injecting the money, especially propping up a lot of zombie companies, there could be some very big problems. And that just delays the inevitable. That's rough. That's rough to think about. I'm not a big fan of the Fed, but it's so woven into economic policy and not just in the United States. I'm talking about globally. Like, what's going to happen? Okay, so this announcement right here, all right, from the Fed, where the Fed is like, hey, we're going to pause. Do you know how many other countries in the world do exactly what the U.S. Fed does? A ton of them. As soon as the Fed does something, they do exactly the same. They just go off of Fed policy. So this just isn't U.S. This covers a ton of countries. Boda20 says, I'm not stopping getting my Delta munchies. Okay, be real. Be real here with me. All right? Be real with me. All right? Delta munchies versus traditional THC munchies. Which is better? Which is better? I'm just asking. Which is better? Tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. Aunt Lynn says, so glad I have my own boobies. They saved me so much money. See, Aunt Lynn hedging against inflation. Well done, Aunt Lynn. I would follow it up with a fairly naughty comment. I'm trying to be somewhat good today. One of the things, it says, I'm sorry, but real CPI is much higher than 3.3. Thanks for the streaming, Klaus. You got to remember this is cumulative. So this 3.3, there's year over year action. So like we've been on the pain train for a while. Dude, okay, so for real, for everyone watching right now that hangs out in the comments, seriously, and if you don't, check out the comments, okay? Look at what Trick said. When America sneezes, the world catches a cold. It is so freaking true. That's why, like, okay, again, watching the comments, Moshtaba Navavi says, this is why I watch this stuff. Because his country follows U.S. economic policy. They just do the exact same thing. So he could catch the news from us. He knows his country's going to do the exact same thing. Boom, there you go. So if housing stays up higher, it's just going to be a mess for everyone longer across the globe. It's very tough. It's very, very tough. I see a few people saying THC is the better choice. Boobies for all. I agree. Yeah, seriously, if we're talking Delta 8 or THC gummies, be real here with me. I keep seeing people try to pimp out Delta 8. Is that just for states that, like, don't have the legit stuff? I mean, be real here with me. I want to know because, like, there's just curious, okay? For science. There you go. It's for frickin' science. Be nice to me. So what's going to happen now is Jerome Powell is going to be on the mic, okay? What's going to happen is he's going to come on in 22 minutes. So you're stuck with me for 22 minutes. Ooh. I'll get rid of their cheesy elevator music right there. So you're hanging out with me until then. So if you got questions, you got comments, let me know. Let me just have a quick pretzel. Sorry, I'm still trying to get my electrolytes up and an electrolyte drink. So give me a quick second. You have a drink at home, or if you're at work or you're in the car, just have a drink, do what you're doing. I'm going to do the same. Sorry, I still have to get my salts up from the race. So I'm very, very, like, serious. I really work hard with my hydration and training and stuff. So that's why I'm doing the electrolyte drinks and the salts, because it helps with your recovery way faster. All right. Salted watermelon is that drink. Salted watermelon. Ty Zero says, what's your personal prediction regarding house prices? Okay, great question. All right. House prices ain't going down anytime soon. You need building materials to come down first. Building materials have still been way too high. The other problem we have too is there's still a shortage of labor in the house construction market, and house construction crews are still way behind. With housing, the big problem is there's not a lot of people listing homes. So homes, the demand is there. The supply is way low. When the supply is way low, it's like, holy crap, homes will hold their values and just go up, 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 and up. And yes, it is a pause for those of you watching. It is a pause. Just throwing it on right now. Pause, no move. So yeah, housing is going to stay expensive for a while. Until we see a break in the PPI. And what the PPI is what the producers pay for stuff, okay? CPI is what we are, right? What consumers pay, and that's what we covered this morning, right? With CPI data that you see up on the screen. PPI data is what the producers pay. So if producers are paying more for lumber, if they're paying more for copper, if they're paying more for their wires and their receptacle boxes, they're going to pass that on to you. I haven't heard anything regarding news on SEC versus Coinbase. But yeah, so with these home producers, they're still paying a lot, and they're also paying a lot for their staff, because there's a lot of people that bailed on the work market here in the United States when the pandemic happened. There was a lot of people that left and did their own thing. So yeah, housing, we're in June right now. You're not going to see big inventory hitting the market right now, because the problem is anyone then that sells their home and wants to list their home and they sell it, when they buy a new home, they're going to be paying way high interest rate. They're going to be paying way higher than they were on their previous home. So yeah, you need interest rates to break for the housing market to break, but you also need inventory levels to go up. It says they printed 30% of money supply during COVID. You're going to see cumulative inflation, at least not to mention the decrease of production during that time. Yeah, the demand for things has still been very strong. Okay, here, I'll explain to everyone, like, housing is a really good way to put it, okay? I would love to buy a new house tomorrow. Not new, but you know what I mean, like a move. I would love to sell my home and buy another one tomorrow, okay? The problem is number one, there's not much inventory for me to choose from. So I would be like settling, right? Number two, anyone that buys my home, okay, is going to be sitting there going, well, wait a minute, what am I paying for rates on that home? They think about that. They're like, oh crap, yeah, you can refi, no big deal, but that squishes a lot of people. So even me, we're like, hey, I'm a cash buyer for homes. There's no inventory. There's junk on the market. Like, there is junk. Builders that are building, a lot of them, like this is you're seeing this, like, especially outside a lot of the bigger cities, you're seeing a lot of builders just not even able to keep up. So it's crazy. It's very, very crazy what's happening with housing. So if housing stays stupid, well, then guess what's going to happen? Inflation is going to stay high. Yeah, energy can break, but is energy really breaking? I'm paying the same thing for fuel that I have been for a while. That's not juicy. I don't like that at all. That doesn't make me feel better. By the way, right now, I've got the most recent change for expectations, all right, regarding rates. You ready? Look at this. This is the July contract. This is July 31st, all right, so about 6 weeks from now. Right now, 90% chance, you ready? 90% chance that the Fed is going to pause in July. I might actually go and change Trick's name in YouTube to the Hawk, because my man is going to be right time and time and time again. 90% chance right now that we're going to have a pause in July's contract. John Rodriguez says, Klaus, thanks for all the info and keeping it real. This is my first live with you, bro. Well, thank you, John, and thank you to all new viewers, and thank you to old friends. Robert Melvin says the streams are always awesome. The streams are legit. when I like measure my stress levels and stuff like that, like after I do my runs and, you know, like when I do meditation, when I do stretching, my stress levels, and I don't know if I have any Garmin fans in the house, go like all to the blue with Garmin. Like seriously, when I log in and I'm doing a live stream, it's really nice blue. I love doing this. This is very calming for me. I know I get excited, but this is positive excitement. This is like, I love this kind of stuff. And I love interacting with all you. It's so much fun. Yeah, Rev, thank you so much for welcoming John to the group. Thank you, Trick, as well. Stephen Smith, Powell will come on in the mic in, 16 minutes. So you're stuck with me for 16 minutes. I'm sorry. Algo Trader says next 2 years, 10%. 10% would be a bit rough. I honestly, I look at this. I think you're going to see home rates stay very similar for quite some time. There's no inventory, man. Like seriously, like, and if you're gonna pay big interest, right? If you're gonna pay big interest, you would pay big interest for like the best choice of homes, the best this, the best that. You just don't want to pay like big interest for settling on a home. Like that, just no one wants that, and that's why there's just no inventory, because people know unless they're paying cash, they're paying a lot of interest, man. I mean, Aunt Lynn says, it isn't a hawk trick when you're right about the market 3 times. That is very clever, Aunt Lynn. Aunt Lynn, very good. I like that one. That was very clever. There would be a hawk trick. Very well. Yeah, we can't have a third live stream, so he can't be right a third time. That's a good job, Aunt Lynn. Yeah, no third live stream today, so for anyone requesting a third live stream, there will not be one. You know, and for everyone out there, it's not just crypto prices that are struggling. Oil prices are struggling as well, and that's what I'm saying. Don't just think, okay, that like you're going to limit the damage to crypto. No, this is everywhere, okay? I mean, like, look at the price of oil. It hasn't broken out. It's had a couple attempts during a little bit of skirmish action, but it's never been able to hold it. So the oil market's been pretty rough too. Okay, Jacob Ladislaw says, Klaus, have you heard of Stellar Canacoin on the XLM market? I'd like to know your opinion of it. Okay, when it comes to investing in cannabis, you got to be super careful. The reason you got to be super careful is because the taxes on it are crazy and it screws your margins. That's why the majority of companies that are in the cannabis industry, their prices, their values are tanked. Because it's like no money. It's just the margins are so razor thin, especially anything from across the border. That's a big problem. Aunt Lynn says, got to take off. Have a great day, my dudes. Aunt Lynn, thank you for hanging out with us. Says, more monkey businesses. Klaus, you think Russia will pull the trigger? Russia will most likely, they can't. The problem Russia has is they're spending money on a lot of war stuff. So you got to print the money. Oil isn't high. Russia depends a lot on oil, right? Oil subsidies. Oil isn't that high for Russia to make a lot of money on it. I mean, natural gas didn't do what we all thought it was going to. We thought natural gas was just going to shit itself. So, yeah, it's not the scenario that I think a lot of people are predicting. Like, there is no, like, one big thing. There's so many things going on right now that we're not sitting in a good spot. I mean, Coconut Monkey says, do you think Fit 21 will pass the Senate and not get vetoed? You know, I got to look into that. Here's the problem. The election here in the United States, people are going to be very afraid to do anything that could cost them votes. All right? They're going to be very afraid to do that. Crypto, finance, technological stuff right now is a very hot topic. A lot of undecided voters. You don't want to piss them off. You don't. Trick says they have 6,500 tons of gold. Russia's holdings. So yes, they're making their money on gold, but what do you make on those oil subsidies? That's a tough one. I don't know. I'm just curious to see what Jerome's going to say today. I just don't want him to be negative. I get it that housing's not breaking. And I get it that, like, the prices of stuff really haven't gone down for us. I mean, like the bag of pretzels that I'm eating right now, they're still like $1 more than before the Rona. So like, yeah, maybe it's not going up and up and up crazy insano style anymore, but it's also not what it used to be, and it changed really quick. And for a lot of families out there, they didn't have the financial resources to navigate through that. Let's see. Ashley says, let's go. Sorry I'm late to the party. No worries, Ashley. Glad you're hanging out with us. Steve Cameron says, crypto bubbles turning green. Switching on over to that heat map. We got Bitcoin sitting at 69,000. Are you able to get some of the 69,000, whether it's Bitcoin or the 69? I don't know. Let me know. Do I got any BTC fans in the house? ETH looking pretty hot at 35.95. Sol climbing its way back. XRP surprisingly having trouble breaking that 50-cent ceiling, while XLM is right there at the 10-cent mark. ICP bouncing back nicely along with Aptos. Doge, people gotta love their risk and their meme. Doge is up 9% in the last 24. Jasmine, we saw, is one of the better players here over the last 24 or 7 days. Jasmine now looking up 9% last 24. Notcoin, look at ton. I'm telling you, everyone, 19% here in the last 24. Trick says they could push that gold price sky high if they wanted to. Yeah, the thing is then what bullets do they have left in their financial economic engine? And that's the thing. And that's what worries me. And Trick, with the email that I sent you right before going live, I mean, isn't that the fear? Like, whether the fear is that we go into a physical war, we go into an economic war, a chemical war, a cyber war. I mean, these are all super damaging things. And I think a lot of us are worried about some sort of shakeup like that. And that's, you don't want people to leverage gold. You don't want people to leverage oil. We've seen what happens when they leverage oil in the Middle East. It's a mess. It's a ripple effect mess. And I would hate for countries to start doing the same with gold. I think that would be rough. Manny's taken out says BTC since 2012. Way to go. Doge, yes, Trick, I did. Doge last 24 hours. Doge is up 9%. Meme, risky, but with risk comes reward. Glenn says maybe JP will surprise us with a rate cut to follow other countries. No, Glenn, it came out already at 2 p.m. and they took a pause. They took a pause. We're looking for the first real chance of a rate cut in the September contract. Coconut Monkey says Caspa's gonna pop after Rust migration complete. They're testing a Binance listing on their channel. Pretty sure it's gonna happen when the migration is complete. Ashley says, what's Peep's opinion on Solana? Everyone, let Ashley know what your thoughts are on Solana. I'll tell you mine. I am more bullish on Solana now that the whole FTX liquidation of them has not melted the price to the ground. The Mike Novogratz from and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Galaxy Digital. I hope I'm saying that right. It was Mike Novogratz. I'm pretty sure that's the company that was hired to liquidate FTX's holdings, and they did a really, really good job of liquidating without causing any market down pressure. So I'm super happy with that. I am super, super happy about that. And for those of you that are looking for good news, and Ashley got your back with this, is now that we know that they can liquidate comfortably like that, I think, and that now Sol isn't like a super big holding that we have to worry about with bankruptcy too much anymore. I'm happy. I'm super happy, and I think Sol has a better future. That being said, we saw, though, what big ownership of a company can do to it. I mean, when the big concerns were there with Sol, I mean, the price was just destroyed. I mean, just destroyed. So, yeah, just throwing it out there. Doing nothing, pause is good. Yeah, I'd say a pause is good. It's because the market's expected it. The market's priced it in. When I look at pause, I think, okay, pause is what's happening now, but how can we get the cutting? And it's going to be with housing, and I think it's hard, man. I think it's hard. Pancho Hernandez says, Klaus had to touch it at the end of the earlier show with that jam you played, and yes, I'm talking about the remote control to turn up the volume. That was Fire and Ice, King Canyon. That's the song I play when I do my live streams. I do. Want to see something cool? When I went racing, this is what the course looked like. Tent City, just like this. Yep, and people slept. We would go running and sleep. I didn't sleep. I just kept running. I just kept running, just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. I was an overachiever. I kept running the whole time. Right now, I like the heat map. Individual price action, kind of messed up. Oil prices, not the strongest. The Fed, taking a pause. What kind of questions, what kind of comments you got? We got 6 minutes until Jerome comes on the mic. So hit him up now. While you think of your questions, hit in the chat. I'm going to have another pretzel along with a another hydration drink. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up on my electrolytes. John Slacks has been working. So what did Jay Powell decide? Decided to pause. He decided to pause. And for those of you curious, how dark was it and what was it like racing at the end? Well, this is what the view of my son.
Already.
And this was how dark it was at night. He had a lantern in there. We had an aid station all set up. It was super cool. Had a cooler of all this gear, all sorts of drinks set up. You didn't want to fire up super bright lights because there were people there sleeping. The race happened overnight. It was a lot of freaking fun. I mean, a lot of freaking fun. So there's my son making drinks for me right there. My son was my crew chief and just had me all loaded up. It was awesome. Manny says, what's your go-to song when you work out? All right, can I dork out? Can I dork out like super fast for the next 5 minutes? I have two go-tos when I work out, okay? And I'll put it to you this way. When I want to go running and I want to get hyped up, and I'm going to admit, I'm going to dork out here, so don't freak out at me, okay? I'm gonna pull back the curtain and show you what it's like in the thoughts in my head. I play Move Your Body, okay? That's what I like to play at the beginning of my runs to kind of get me to go. It has a faster beat, and I can run to that cadence. Now, when I'm doing like my super long runs, like my shitty long runs, like my crappy ones where like I'm running for 4, 5, 6 hours or something like that, I play the original Star Wars Episode 4, the non-enhanced version Trench Run. And I kid you not, I just kind of pretend that I'm running down the trail, down the path, and this is my trench run, and that no matter everything that happens, I have to stay focused, I have to trust myself, I have to trust my feelings, I have to trust my training, I have to trust my instincts, and that will get me out of any jam. I kid you not, my fastest freaking lap was my second to last lap. And I did. I put Trench Run on the old headphones, and dude, I just blazed a freaking trail, man. Like, blazed a freaking trail. My second to last run, mile 56, was my fastest mile. It was freaking nuts, dude. So yeah, that's what I listen to when I work out. I listen to actually quite a lot of stuff. I like Ministry. I like a lot of hardcore stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah. Trick says, no way I'd be out in an airstrip in the blackness of night. Yeah, this place was held at a crash landing facility at Ranger Training Camp. And what happened was all these people up here, these are their headlamps of all the people coming against me. And I'll show you, this is how dark it got. There were no lights here. So I fired off my headlamp. That's what it was like running at night. You could not see a frickin' thing, just people's headlamps and the track. It was absolutely nuts. It was absolutely frickin' nuts. Klaus Fudclown says ton has no utility. Dude, there is some utility with Toncoin. You got to be careful. 30 million downloads a month with Telegram. Even if like 0.1% of those people participate with Toncoin and ecosystem stuff, you're gaining lots of people. Lots of freaking people. Let's see. Ton and Telegram is money. Yeah, I'm telling you, Telegram is big. All they have to do is just fix the scams on Telegram. Dude, and you can't ask Crash GPT. Crash Landing, it gets worse. No, dude, yeah, we had to worry about snakes. We had to worry about bears. Poisonous snakes and bears. It was a fun race, man. It was a lot of fun. I had my headlamp on the whole time. Had my drinks. I had my snacks. I was eating, dude. I was eating like mad, too. I was eating tons of food. I mean, insane amounts of food. Let's see. Inflation came in hot. 2:28 is the time, which means we got 2 more minutes till Jerome Powell comes on the mic. I'm very happy to see that. Also going to see what he says in regards to future, because remember, the difference with this meeting is going to be what, everyone? This one has the summary of economic projections. So this is going to have a lot more juicy material. So for instance, in the projection materials, oh, here we go. Expectations and change in GDP. They think GDP is going to be leveled off right here. They think unemployment is going to stay at 4% for a while. That's going to be interesting. Inflation, they're saying, is going to be high through 2025. I'm just giving y'all a quick heads up right now. 2025 on inflation. Core PCE, they said same thing. It's going to take a while. They're saying the rest of 2024 is probably going to be rough. Let's see on rates. All right, so they're basically saying rates are going to be real high. Look at this. Real high this year. And next year is when we're going to have the chance of breaking. It looks like next year right now, the median expectation is about 4 rate cuts for next year. With 2020 still not getting back to normal until 2027 and beyond. So what the Fed is saying is you're going to have slow growth probably in the back half of this decade because we're going to be eating the inflation bubble for a while. I just gave you a pretty good summary. Now we've got Jerome Powell on the mic. When he comes on, I will be sure to mute my mic so that you can watch my man JP. So let me go to here. Give me a second here. Let's carry that right there. Go to Jerome Powell.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Our economy has made considerable progress toward both goals over the past 2 years. The labor market has come into better balance with continued strong job gains and a low unemployment rate. Inflation has eased substantially from a peak of 7% to 2.7%, but is still too high. We are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% goal in support of a strong economy that benefits everyone. Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. We are maintaining our restrictive stance of monetary policy in order to keep demand in line with supply and reduce inflationary pressures. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace. Although GDP growth moderated from 3.4% in the fourth quarter of last year to 1.3% in the first quarter, private domestic final purchases, which excludes inventory investment, government spending, and net exports, and usually sends a clearer signal on underlying demand, grew at 2.8% in the first quarter, nearly as strong as the second half of 2023. Growth of consumer spending has slowed from last year's robust pace, but remains solid. And investment in equipment and intangibles has picked up from its anemic pace last year. Improving supply conditions have supported resilient demand and the strong performance of the U.S. economy over the past year. In our summary of economic projections, committee participants generally expect GDP growth to slow from last year's pace, with a median projection of 2.1% this year and 2.0% over the next 2 years. In the labor market, supply and demand conditions have come into better balance. Payroll job gains averaged 218,000 jobs per month in April and May, a pace that is still strong, but a bit below that seen in the first quarter. The unemployment rate ticked up, but remains low at 4%. Strong job creation over the past couple of years has been accompanied by an increase in the supply of workers, reflecting increases in participation among individuals aged 25 to 54 years and a continued strong pace of immigration. Nominal wage growth has eased over the past year, and the jobs to workers gap has narrowed. Overall, a broad set of indicators suggests that conditions in the labor market have returned to about where they stood on the eve of the pandemic, relatively tight but not overheated. FOMC participants expect labor market strength to continue. The median unemployment rate projection in the SEP is 4.0% at the end of this year and 4.2% at the end of next year. Inflation has eased notably over the past 2 years, but remains above our longer-run goal of 2%. Total PCE prices rose 2.7% over the 12 months ending in April. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.8%. The Consumer Price Index, which came out this morning and tends to run higher than the PCE price index, rose 3.3% over the 12 months ending in May, and the core CPI rose 3.4%. The inflation data received earlier this year were higher than expected, though more recent monthly readings have eased somewhat. Longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households and businesses and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation is 2.6% this year, 2.3% next year, and 2.0% in 2026. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. In support of these goals, the committee decided at today's meeting to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5%, and to continue reducing our securities holdings. As labor market tightness has eased and inflation has declined over the past year, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals have moved toward better balance. The economic outlook is uncertain, however, and we remain highly attentive to inflation risks. We've stated that we do not expect it will be appropriate to reduce the target range for the federal funds rate until we have gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. So far this year, the data have not given us that greater confidence. The most recent inflation readings have been more favorable than earlier in the year, however, and there has been modest further progress toward our inflation objective. We'll need to see more good data to bolster our confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. We know that reducing policy restraint too soon or too much could result in a reversal of the progress that we've seen on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too late or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering any adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will carefully assess incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path for the federal funds rate, based on what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario going forward. If the economy evolves as expected, the median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 5.1% at the end of this year, 4.1% at the end of 2025, and 3.1% at the end of 2026. But these projections are not a committee plan or any kind of a decision. As the economy evolves, assessments of the appropriate policy path will adjust in order to best promote our maximum employment and price stability goals. If the economy remains solid and inflation persists, we're prepared to maintain the current target range for the federal funds rate as long as appropriate. If the labor market were to weaken unexpectedly, or if inflation were to fall more quickly than anticipated, we're prepared to respond. Policy is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties that we face in pursuing both sides of our dual mandate. We'll continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting, based on the totality of the data and its implications for the outlook and the balance of risks. The Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Restoring price stability is essential to achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the long run. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Leisman, CNBC. Just wondering if you could walk me through the committee's average inflation forecast. Core PCE is now forecast to be 2.8% by the year end. It's already 2.75, and after today's number, there were several forecasts on the street that it would be 2.6 at the end of this month. Does that tell you that the average official expects no further progress in inflation, and in fact that it's going to get worse? And if you have this wrong, doesn't it mean that you could have wrong the outlook for rates there?
Yeah, so what's going on there is that we had very low readings in the second half of last year, June through December, really. And we're now lapping those. So as you go through the 12-month window, a very low reading drops out and a new reading comes in. The new reading gets added to the 12-month window. So it's just a slight element of conservatism that we're assuming a certain level of incoming monthly PCE and core PCE numbers. We're assuming, a good but not great numbers. And if you put that on top of where we are now, you get a very slight increase in the 12-month reading. Now, do we have high confidence that that's right? No, it's just a kind of conservative way for forecasting things. If we were to get more readings like today's reading, then of course that wouldn't be the case. So it's just a forecasting device. I think. Let me say that we welcome today's reading and hope for more like that.
But if it comes in, just to follow up, it comes in the way you forecast it, it would seem strange for you to be cutting rates at all in context of a rising core PCE. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what we said is that we don't think it'll be appropriate to reduce rates and begin to loosen policy until we have more confidence that inflation is moving back down to 2% on a sustainable basis. And that's the test we've applied. I don't know that this rules that in or out. I mean, really, it's a forecast, a fairly conservative forecast, month by month, that would lead to slightly higher 12 months rates by the end of the year. If we get, better ratings than that, then you will see that come down or remain the same. If you're at 2.6, 2.7, that's a really good place to be.
Nick Temeros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, if I look at the rate projections, I see 15 of the 19 that are anticipating either one or two cuts this year, fairly evenly split between the two. And so I wonder if you could explain a little bit more the nuances or the differences there. Would 2 or 3 more inflation readings, like the one that we saw this morning, make a September interest rate cut possible?
So as far as the SEP part of that is concerned, as you know, I talk to all of the other participants on the FOMC every cycle, and we talk about their summary of economic projections and the their dot plot and everything. And what I hear and see is that people are looking at a range of plausible outcomes, and in many cases they're thinking, I can't really distinguish between two of these. They're so close for me. These are very close calls. But we ask them to write down the most likely one, so they do. And I think as you've said, there's 15 of the 19 are kind of clustered around 1 or 2. So I think I would look at all. I look at all of them as plausible, but I'd look at I think that does tell you kind of what the committee thinks. But what everyone agrees on is it's going to be data dependent. No one brings to this or takes away from it, that is on the committee, a really strong commitment to a particular rate path. It's actually just their forecast, and it's a combination of their forecast and their own reaction function. But again, everyone would say that this is very data dependent, and I don't hold it with high confidence. And I think if you're looking for and don't really think that they're not trying to send a strong signal that this is what I think is the right thing. It's just what they think at a given moment in time, subject to data. In terms of future meetings, we haven't, we don't make decisions about future meetings until we get there. I think in terms of what we need to see, I mentioned it earlier. We want to gain further confidence. Certainly, more good inflation readings will help with that. I'm not going to be specific about how many because, really it's going to be not just the inflation readings, it's going to be the totality of the data. What's happening in the labor market, what's happening with the balance of risks, what's happening with the forecast, what's happening with growth. You look at all of that and you ask, are we confident? Have we reached an appropriate level of confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably to 2%? Or alternatively, do we see really unexpected signs of weakness in the labor market that would call for a response? Which is another thing that could happen. But again, we don't see that, and we see today's report as progress and as building confidence. But we don't see ourselves as having the confidence that would warrant beginning to loosen policy at this time.
And if I could quickly follow up, did you or any of your colleagues change your interest rate projections after 8:30 or whenever you got the inflation numbers today?
So this happens too often, but it does happen. It just is, data came, I think it happened a few meetings ago. So when that happens, when there's an important data print during the meeting, first day or second day, what we do is we make sure people remember that they have the ability to update. We tell them how to do that, and some people do, some people don't. Most people don't. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but you have the ability to do that. So that what's in the SEP actually does reflect the data that we got today, to the extent you can, reflect it in one day. I think we'll see PPI tomorrow. We'll know more about the PCE reading as the month goes on, but the initial CPI reading and its kind of first level translation to PCE we did have this morning. We were briefed about it, and people were able to consider whether they should make changes. And as I said, some people generally do, but most people generally don't.
John Allen.
Hi, Chair Powell, Janelle Marte from Bloomberg. As you noted, the labor market is now in many ways back to where it was before the pandemic. I wondered if you could comment on how officials are viewing that. So do you think that there still needs to be more cooling in the labor market to bring inflation all the way down to 2%? Or is there any sense that maybe the labor market is more vulnerable now to higher rates now that many of those imbalances have eased?
Sure. So by so many measures, the labor market was kind of overheated 2 years ago, and we've seen it gradually move back into much better balance between supply and demand. So what have we seen? We've seen labor force supply come up quite a bit through immigration and through recovering participation. That's ongoing mostly now through the immigration channel, but still we've had some increases in prime age labor force. In terms of on the demand side, we've seen quits moving down. We've seen job openings moving down. We've seen wage increases moving from very, very high levels a couple of years ago back down to more sustainable levels. We have seen unemployment creep up now 0.6 over the course of a year or so, very, very gradually. So you put all that together, what you have is still low unemployment, still 4% unemployment, historically low. But it's moved up a little bit, it's softened a bit, and that's an important statistic. But more than that, you've got strong job creation. You have payroll jobs still coming in strong, even though there's an argument that they may be a bit overstated, but still, they're strong. So that's what we see. We watch the labor market, of course, and the economy as a whole, but the labor market very carefully, and that's what we see. We see gradual cooling, gradual moving toward better balance. We're monitoring it carefully for signs of something more than that, but we really don't see that.
As a quick follow-up, the surveys that make up the jobs report are showing different tales. There's been some divergence, especially we saw in the last report that we got on Friday. So how do you interpret that, and how does it change your view on the labor market? So
sometimes you can't reconcile the differences. You just have to look at it and try to understand, and that's why it always makes sense to look at a series, in 3, 6, and 12 months of things rather than just one report. But you're right to point to the last report where there were job losses in the household survey, job gains, big job gains in the establishment survey. So, we're left with ambiguous results, and we have to deal with that uncertainty around data. Nonetheless, the overall picture is one of a strong and gradually cooling, gradually rebalancing labor market. Job openings, while they've come way down, are still, greater than the number of unemployed people. The jobs workers gap is still a significantly positive number, greater than it was before the pandemic. So overall, we're looking at what is still a very strong labor market, but not the superheated labor market of 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. Back on the rates path, the SEP showed quite a large shift of rate cut expectations relative to March. That's a period in which the economic data flow hasn't been that dramatic a shift. Can you provide some color on what changed in attitudes on the committee over the last 3 months to see a much shallower path of rate cuts this year?
Yeah, the big thing that changed was the inflation forecast. So the inflation forecast moved up several tenths for the end of the year. And as I mentioned earlier in the, what did we take away from this? We had really, really good inflation data in the second half of last year, then kind of a pause in progress in the first quarter. And what we took away from that was that it's probably going to take longer to get the confidence that we need to begin to loosen policy. So the sense of that is that rate cuts that might have taken place this year take place next year. There are fewer rate cuts in the median this year, but there's one more next year. So if you look at year-end 2025 and 26, you're almost exactly where you would have been. Just it's moved later because of that progress. Now you get different data today. So we'll have to see where the data light the way. The economy has repeatedly surprised forecasters in both directions, and today was certainly a better inflation report than almost anybody expected. And we'll just have to see what the incoming data flow brings and how that affects the outlook and the balance of risks.
Gina. Gina Smiley, New York Times. Thanks for taking our questions. In the summary of economic projections, the long-run interest rate forecast moved up a bit. I wonder if we should read that as a sign that you think that policy is not sort of as restrictive as we previously expected. How should we interpret what that means about how the committee views its current policy setting?
So two things about that. One is this. You're right, it did move up, but I want to remember to point out that long-run neutral rate of interest is a long-run concept. It really is a theoretical concept, can't be directly observed, and what it is the interest rate that would hold the economy at equilibrium, maximum employment, and price stability, potentially years in the future where there are no shocks. So it's a little bit, it's not something we observe today. Today we've got a very specific economy with all kinds of shocks we're still getting over from the pandemic. So it's, I don't think that the concept of R-star, it's a very important concept in economics and in what we do, but honestly, it doesn't really get you where you need to be to think about what appropriate policy is in the near term. But back to your original question, people have been gradually writing it up because I just think people are coming to the view that rates are less likely to go down to their pre-pandemic levels, which were very low by recent history measures. Now we can't really know that. That's an interesting dispute and discussion to have now. But ultimately, we think that things like the neutral rate are driven by longer-run, slow-moving forces, and there's a really good question about whether those really have changed or whether instead rates and the economy are experiencing a series of persistent but ultimately temporary shocks. That's been the debate, and we can't know. But in the meantime, we're making policy with the economy that we have, with the distortions that we have. And I also, to your other point, I think it is the case that as time has gone by, the question of how restrictive is policy has become one that everyone's asking, and we're asking it too. And my answer has been that policy is restrictive. The question of whether it's sufficiently restrictive is going to be one we know over time. But I think for the reasons I talked about at the last press conference and other places, I think the evidence is pretty clear that policy is restrictive and is having the effects that we would hope for.
Well, thanks, Chair Powell. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to carry that a little further, should we read this as a conclusion, the combination of tipping to one cut this year and acknowledging further progress on inflation as kind of a mark to market on the level of restrictiveness that you need, that you in fact have concluded that you weren't quite there yet?
I'd be reluctant to try to draw that conclusion. I think this is about, looking at the incoming data and asking how much progress are we making on inflation and how is the rest of the economy doing? Is the labor market still strong? That's what we're thinking about. You can translate it into the language you're talking about, but to me the focus is more on we have a goal which is price stability, another goal which is maximum employment. How are we doing there? We think we've got a good, strong labor market still. We think we've been making progress toward the price stability goal. And then for a while there was a pause, and we look at today's thing and we think, well, that's a good reading, and we hope we get more like that. And in the meantime, we're asking, is our policy stance about right? And we think yes, it's about right. We're prepared to adjust it as appropriate, but we think we're getting the things that we would want to get, broadly speaking, and that's why we've been at this policy right now for almost a year.
So just to follow up on that, I think one curious thing here is you've got now this restrictive policy in place and virtually no change in any of the major things for all of this year. You've got growth that stays above long-run potential throughout the forecast period, unemployment that never goes above the long-run estimate, right, of 4.2. So this isn't a story of slack improving inflation. So where's the improvement in inflation coming from that it's going to pick up pace so much in 2025?
Well, it's been coming. Where's it been coming from? We'll start with that. Clearly, a lot of some of what we've been getting is just the reversal of the unwinding of the pandemic-related distortions to both supply and demand, and that is complemented by and amplified, supported by restrictive monetary policy. So those two things have been working together. We've also had a very positive supply shock on the labor side, and also you get a positive supply shock when the supply conditions unwind and return to normal. So you've had above trend potential growth and high growth, and yet you've had the benefit of inflation coming down really fast actually last year, and we'll see what the rest of this year brings. So these dynamics can continue as long as they continue. Ultimately, the question is are you down to demand? And we don't know that, though. We're look at today's report. If we see more like that, we can't know what the future holds. But in the meantime, we've made pretty good progress on inflation with our current stance.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. The base case of the committee seems to be that there is going to be at least one rate cut this year, but your growth forecast doesn't see any slowdown in the rest of the year, nor does the unemployment forecast see any significant weakening of the labor market. And your inflation forecasts basically average out to no change. So if at the end of the year there is no change from conditions now, why would you anticipate cutting rates? What would be the point for a rate cut?
Well, we think policy is restrictive, and we think ultimately that if you just set policy at a restrictive level, eventually you will see real weakening in the economy. So that's always been the thought, is that since we raised rates this far, we've always been pointing to cuts at a certain point, not to eliminate the possibility of hikes, but no one has that as their base case. So no one on the committee does. But so that's how we think about it, and that's what we've been getting. That's what we've been getting is good progress on inflation, with growth at a good level, and with a strong labor market. Now, ultimately, we think rates will have to come down to continue to support that, but so far they haven't had to, and that's why we're watching so carefully for signs of weakness. We don't really see that. We kind of see what we wanted to see, which was gradual cooling in demand, gradual rebalancing in the labor market, while we're continuing to make progress on inflation. So we're getting good results here.
Well, to follow up, is there any kind of concern for the housing industry or financial stability, banks, in leaving rates where they are for too long at this point?
On housing, the housing situation is a complicated one, and you can see that's a place where rates are really having a significant effect. Ultimately, the best thing we can do for the housing market is to bring inflation down so that we can bring rates down so that the housing market can continue to normalize. There will still be a national housing shortage, as there was before the pandemic. There will still be one, but the distortions that we see now with lock-ins and things like that, low mortgages. In terms of banks, the banking system has been, solid, strong, well-capitalized, lending. We've seen good performance by the banks. We had the turmoil early last year, but banks have been focusing on bringing up their liquidity, bringing up their capital, and having risk management plans in place. So the banking system, seems to be in good shape.
Chris.
Thanks. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. I was wondering if we can, on inflation, if you can tell us a little more about where you see inflationary pressure in the economy. You mentioned labor markets coming into better balance, and inflation expectations appear to be well anchored. You're seeing, anecdotal stories of the large chains like Walmart and Target are announcing price cuts. McDonald's announcing a $5 meal deal. So, people may still be unhappy about prices at the grocery store, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of inflationary pressure left in this economy. I wonder if you could tell us more about it.
I think it's true that inflationary pressures have come down, but we're still getting high inflation readings. So, and I think you can see it in various places. In some parts of non-housing services, you see elevated inflation still, and that's probably it could be to do with wages. Goods prices have kind of fluctuated. There's been a surprising increase in import prices on goods, which is kind of hard to understand, and we've taken some signal from that. But and of course, housing services, you're continuing to see high readings there. To some extent, that's catch-up inflation from earlier pressures. But overall, you're right. Inflationary pressures have come down. As I mentioned, the labor market has come into better balance. Wages are still running, I would say, above a sustainable path, which would be that of trend inflation and trend productivity. You're still seeing wage increases moving above that. We haven't thought of wages as being the principal, cause of inflation, but at the same time, getting back to 2% inflation is likely to require return to a more sustainable level, which is somewhat below the current level of increases in the aggregate.
Rachel.
Hi, Chair Powell, Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions. There's obviously a lot of focus on how many cuts could be expected this year, but can you give us a sense of what one cut by the end of the year would actually do to the economy, what you think would be a meaningful difference if there was a cut by the end of the year, or even two?
I think if you look back in 5 or 10 years and try to pull out the significance to the U.S. economy of one 25 basis point rate cut, you'd have quite a job on your hands. So that's not how we look at it. Really the whole rate path matters, and I do continue to think that when we do start to loosen policy, that will show up in a significant loosening in financial market conditions, and the market will price in what it prices in. I have no way of saying, we're not at that stage, so I don't know what we'll be thinking about at that time. But it's a consequential decision for the economy, and you want to get it right. And fortunately, we have a strong economy, and we have the ability to approach this question carefully, and we will approach it carefully while we're very much keeping an eye on downside economic risks should they emerge.
And you've been talking about this clear sense that it's just going to take longer to have the confidence that's needed for rate cuts. Is there something about what happened in the first couple of months of the year that you're seeing differently now with more time or hindsight? Do you still characterize it as expected bumpiness or something more lasting that is affecting your policy for the rest of the year?
We always want to avoid the tendency to dismiss the parts of inflation that we don't like and just make it go away. But we had a quarter where inflation was running higher, and yes, I could stand here and say it's stuff we shouldn't have taken signal from, but it is what it is. You have to, low inflation is low inflation, high inflation. So if you have a quarter where it's higher, we tried not to take signal from the first couple of months, but we got a third month, and we said, okay, the signal we're taking is that we think it's going to take longer to get confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down 2%. That's what we said. I think that was the right thing to do. I still think that's the right thing to do. Now we have today's inflation reading, which is very different, very much more positive. We're going to have to see what the trend is, what's going to be the data going forward. We're looking for something that gives us confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. And readings like today's, that's a step in the right direction, but one reading isn't. It's only one reading. You don't want to be too motivated by any single data point.
Jolene. Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you for taking our questions. I'm Jolene Kent with CBS News. What's your message to Americans who are seeing encouraging economic data but don't feel good about this economy?
I don't think anyone knows, has a definitive answer why people are not as happy about the economy as they might be. And we don't tell people how they should think or feel about the economy. That's not our job. People experience what they experience. All I can tell you is what the data show, which is we've got an economy that's growing at a solid pace. We've got a very strong labor market with unemployment at 4%. It's been a long time since we've had a long stretch of time with unemployment at or below 4%, very long time. We had a period of high inflation. Inflation has come down really significantly, and we're doing everything we can to bring that inflationary episode fully to a halt and fully restore price stability. We're confident that we'll get there. And in the meantime, it's going to be painful for people, but the ultimate pain would be a period of a long period of high inflation. It is people who, lower income people who are at the margins of the economy who have the worst experience, who experience the most pain from inflation. So, it's for those people, for all Americans, but particularly for those people that we're doing everything we can to bring inflation back down under control.
As just a quick follow-up here, you've indicated one interest rate cut sometime this year, and I know you don't have a crystal ball up there, but a lot of people are watching and see, borrowing money remains very expensive. For everybody who's out there waiting on a rate cut, about when can consumers expect some relief?
Well, I don't have a precise date for you, but what we said is that we want to make sure that we're confident that inflation is actually moving back down to 2%. And when we are, then we can look at loosening policy. So having that kind of confidence that inflation will be at 2%, it just pays benefits to the whole economy, to all Americans for a long period of time. We had that period for a very long time. We very much want to get back to a place where people can not think about inflation. It's just not a concern in the everyday economic decisions that they make. We were there for a long time, and our goal is to get back to that place. And we've made good progress, and we're in the phase now of just sticking with it until we get it done.
Claire.
Claire Jones, Financial Times. Just drawing on the change in the statement on there being modest further progress on inflation. Halfway, through the year and after today's CPI release, what have you and other committee members found that has been particularly encouraging to you? And just in terms of the conservatism, how much of that is about stickiness in shelter inflation in particular? Thank you.
So encouraging has been that growth, the growth clearly that we had last year, and particularly the second half of last year, and we continue to see still strong growth or solid growth this year. That's been very encouraging. If you go back a year, there was a real concern about, very much slowing growth and a recession. Many forecasters had that. And that's not what happened. Instead, the U.S. is, anyway, and it's in sharp distinction with many other advanced economies around the world. So that's been encouraging. I would say that today's inflation report is encouraging, but it comes after, several your reports that were not so encouraging. You ask about, your second question was really about shelter inflation. So I think if you go back a couple of years, we know that there are renters, and then there are people who own their houses, and we have OER, which is owner's equivalent rent. And so when market-based rents go up sharply, as they did at the beginning when the economy reopened, they really went up sharply. those play into rollover rents much more slowly for existing tenants than they do for new tenants. And so we found now that there are big lags. So there's sort of a bulge of high past increases in market rents that has to get worked off, and that may take several years. Nonetheless, as long as market rents are going up at relatively low levels, and they still are, this is just going to happen. It just is going to happen more slowly than we thought. We also do sort of this thing where we impute a rental value to owned homes, and that's many countries around the world do that. Some do it differently than us. It's something that the price experts have regularly looked at. It is not something that we're the only country that does, and it's not something we're looking at changing or would look at changing, anytime soon. But it's true. It's one of the very hardest things in inflation and in prices is how to think about, the services that someone is getting by living in a home that they could rent, but they're actually living in it. And some countries choose to just ignore that, but that's not how we do inflation here. We do it the way we do it, and we've been very transparent about it. And it's true that we're seeing delays in realizing what's happening economically, but we understand that. We understand that very well.
Edward.
Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. Thank you for taking the question, Chair Powell. So I want to go back to jobs and the consumer. The last jobs report showed that over the past year, 634,000 more people took multiple jobs. That's up 8.2%. And since January of 2021, we've seen prices rise 19%. So people are using their credit cards to pay for their lifestyle. What pressure points will signal to you that the slowing economy could maybe break companies in terms of hiring or break the consumer in terms of spending?
So, we monitor all the things you mentioned and more. What we're seeing is basically spending was going up faster than disposable income during big parts of last year rather. And so what you'd expect to see is people spending more on their credit cards. That has been happening. Credit card balances have been going up. Credit card defaults have been going up. They're not at high levels. Remember that after the pandemic, people were cooped up. They couldn't spend money. They couldn't go out to spend money. They could spend money from home. But households were in very, very strong, historically strong financial shape. They've now worked off a lot of that. So we're watching that carefully. And, what do we see? That's what we see. We see the same data that everybody else sees, but you've still got household sector that's in pretty good shape. But nonetheless, it's not in the kind of shape it was in a year or two ago. And we're carefully watching that.
So how close then are we to that point where the consumer can't continue to spend as they're spending, or companies can't hire like they're hiring?
Consumer spending is still growing. It's not growing at the pace it was growing at a year or so ago, but it's still growing solidly. And by the way, other parts of the economy are picking up. Spending on equipment and intangibles has picked up quite a bit in the wake of all the construction that we saw of new tech plants. So overall, the economy is exhibiting solid growth, and something around 2%, which is a good pace of growth for the U.S. economy. But you're right though. We do see the same thing other people see, which is increasing financial pressures on more lower income people, and the best thing we can do is to foster a very strong jobs economy, which we think we have done. Ultimately, to get inflation under control, because those people experience inflation, very directly, very painfully, and once we get inflation under control, rates can come down, which will also improve things.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. You've mentioned that an unexpected weakening in the labor market would bring rate cuts sooner, and I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about what that would look like? Is it more of like a quicker pace of people losing jobs? Is it more the level of the unemployment rate if it were to start to go above 4.2 or something like that? How are you thinking about what you're looking for to see the job market unexpectedly weaken?
When I say unexpectedly, the first thing is more than kind of is in our forecast or in common forecasts. So something more than that. But We'll be looking at everything. You know, the labor market, you know, has the ability, has the tendency sometimes to move and to weaken quickly. So waiting for that to happen is not what we're doing. You know, we're watching very carefully. We're looking at the balance of risks. I always point out the balance of risks. So, and also the fact that we look at all of the whole situation. So, you know, a decision to begin to, you know, to loosen policy could have several reasons associated with it at a given time. But I would just, you know, we monitor all the labor market data, and if we saw troubling weakening more than expected, then that would be something we'd consider responding to. But we look at the broader context of what's going on too.
So something like negative payroll numbers would be.
I'm not going to. I mean, I can think of things that many things would make it on that list, but I don't think I'll utter them here.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Simon Urbanovich with The Economist. May I ask, you mentioned with the slightly higher PC readings earlier this year that it wasn't 1 or 2 months, but 3 months that tipped you to be a bit more cautious in the rate outlook. Should we take from that, you know, it looks like May will be quite good for PC as it was for CPI. Does that imply that kind of 2 more good months would reinstill the confidence that rate cuts could be coming sooner than you currently project? You know,
I don't actually have that kind of mechanical thing in my thinking. I get that, you know, as many good ones as we had bad ones, but no, it's not like that. It's the whole, it's going to be the totality of the data. The labor market data, the growth data, in terms of inflation, you know, you'd want to see real progress that builds your confidence that we are on a path down to 2%. And I don't want to try to give you specific numbers of things, because that points to dates, and I just don't think we're not at a point of being able to do that.
Kosuke. Thank you for doing this. I'm Kosuke Takami with Nikkei. I would like to know about the impact of stronger dollar on U.S. economic growth and prices. And I have no doubt that the market should determine the exchange rate, but Japan and some emerging markets are suffering from the strong dollar. So I want to know if it is having a positive impact on U.S. economy in total. Thank you.
So we don't, actually it's our finance ministry, the Treasury Department, that has a responsibility for thinking about and if it sees fit, doing things about the level of the dollar. So for us, it's just another financial variable, and you're right, the dollar has been, has exhibited some strength over the course of the last year or so because the U.S. economy is very strong. We don't think of it as benefiting or hurting the U.S. We don't manage the level of the dollar. That's not our job. It's not, you know, and for our economy, what we're trying to foster is maximum employment and price stability, and we feel like we've made good progress on both of those goals over the course of the past year.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. You said you would cut rates before inflation falls to 2%. You're forecasting inflation to end the year at 2.8% on core PCE, or at 2.8%, of course, on core PCE. Right now, you said the inflation forecast is conservative and that if you got 2.6 to 2.7 on PCE, that would be a good place to be. You also indicated the job market has mostly normalized. So why not cut rates this summer just once, you're well above neutral, to try to preserve the soft landing rather than risking waiting too long in the quest for confidence for inflation?
You know, so we're well aware of the two-sided risks here. Let me just say, we understand that if we wait too long, that could come at the cost of economic activity, of employment, of the expansion. We understand that if we move too quickly, we could end up undoing a lot of the good that we've done and have to then start over, and it could be very disruptive. So we're extremely aware of both of those risks and just basically trying to manage them. And what we said is that we don't think it'll be appropriate to begin to loosen policy until we're more confident that inflation is moving down to 2% over time on a sustainable basis. That's kind of been our test. Or there's another test, which is, you know, an unexpected deterioration in labor market conditions. So I think that's the right way for us to think about it. That's our dual mandate there. And, you know, we have a strong economy. We've got growth. All forecasts are very commonly around 2%. That's a strong growth rate for our economy. The labor market continues to print jobs at a pretty high rate. Unemployment's still low. So we have the ability now to approach this question carefully, and that's what we're doing.
And just to follow Chair Powell, do you need to be ahead of a weakening in the labor market? Otherwise, is it too late, given that the labor market is a lagging indicator, right, when you look at the monthly jobs data?
Yeah, we completely understand that that's the risk, and that's not our plan, is to wait for things to break and then try to fix them. We're trying to balance these two goals in a way that is consistent with our framework, and we think we're doing that.
Evan.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Evan Reiser with Market News International. You have mentioned before the framework review process will start in the latter half of the year. At this point, do you have any specific time frame for the start of that? Who will lead it? Will it be you or a committee group of your peers? What will be the parameters? Do you anticipate the review will consider changes to communications going forward?
So what we've been thinking is that we would announce and commence the review later or late in the year. In the meantime, as that time approaches, we will be devoting a lot of careful thought and planning to the contours of it. Within scope would certainly be communications generally. I'm not going to say that we'll look at this or that particular thing, and all the other details. We don't want to get prematurely into a conversation until it's really time to have it. And so, I'm going to leave pretty much everything else to later in the year.
Go to Nancy for the last question.
Hi, Chair Powell. Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. Just one more question on housing. Can you still cut rates with shelter prices high, or will you wait until they start to moderate a bit?
I wouldn't, there isn't any one variable like housing prices moderating that would really decide against what we're doing. We've got an overall test, which is greater confidence that inflation is moving down to 2% on a sustainable basis. That's our overall test. Or alternatively, we see unexpected weakening in the labor market. So those are two different tests. I would say, we're not looking at any one price in any one sector and saying that's the one. We don't target housing prices, for example, and we don't target wages. We target aggregate prices and overall employment. So,
but if housing prices remain sticky, could that slow down the pace of rate cuts?
I think you'd look at we'd be looking at the aggregate numbers and asking ourselves what's going on here with inflation at the aggregate level. And of course, if any price that contributed to ongoing inflation would matter. Any price that contributed to ongoing disinflation would matter too. But I wouldn't single out housing as having a special role there. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Jerome, for boring us to death for the last half hour. Oh my frickin' gosh, everyone. Basically, I mean, he said, look, data's going to tell us what we need to do. I mean, you've got your best chance coming right before the election, and I think we're all thinking the same thing, right? That's when it's probably going to happen. I mean, it's that if we're going to get a cut this year, it's either happening before the election or that is it. No, it is not Jerome Plow. No, it would be Jerome Plow all. Don't blame R. Kelly for the bird flu, but blame R. Kelly for, he's already been convicted, so it's not a big deal. I don't know, everyone. I mean, that was a little different. He was a bit more, I don't know how to put it. He seemed at ease. Like we've watched him months past. He's been a prick. I mean, he's been very different, man. Like very, very different. And today he was at ease. It made me feel like Jerome knows what's up. Like someone said to him, Jerome, boobala, this is what you're going to do, and you're going to be taken care of. You won't get in trouble. You're not going to be the fall guy. I have kind of a weird feeling about that. Like, he just seemed too relaxed, man. And, like, how can you be relaxed when CPI data sucks and PPI data is going to blow tomorrow? I mean, that's not good. Blame Canada, maybe. I mean, we maybe could blame Canada, but I don't think we could. I mean, he did. Jerome did seem less Jerome than you. He just seemed at ease. And like, okay. Right? Little bit of muscle relaxer, a little bit of, you know, anti this, anti that. You start feeling pretty good. Maybe that's what Jerome's doing. I don't know. But he did. He just seemed much more at ease. And it just, I don't know. Like, he knows. He's like, guys, here's the deal. This is what's going to happen. It just, he seemed too... not soft, but just kind of like it is what it is, like a matter-of-fact thing. Yeah, maybe he is giving up. Maybe that's like the right emotion I'm trying to explain here. But Jerome just did not see the same. Did not seem the same. So the market did pretty good. The market digested all the news quite well, which I'm very happy about, obviously. Would we like more juicy action? Of course we would. I mean, let's be real here. Everyone's like, oh, XRP is mooning. No, it's really not. I mean, just throwing it out there. Same thing with XLM. There's no moon. But when the cuts are going to happen, I think he knows. I think he was told. So yeah, that's the deal, everyone. If you want to check it out, I will have all this stuff linked down below. The Federal Reserve site is pretty legit. They are on YouTube too, so you can check them out on there. CME Group is where you want to go if you want to get odds on when they're going to cut rates and what the actual odds are of those cuts. Right now, 99% chance that we are going to... Nope, sorry, everyone. We are at a 91.1% chance that we're going to pause on the next one. So that's the deal. If y'all got any questions or comments, ask them now. I do have a few things I have to tackle today. So let's do this. Garmin is telling me we're at 3:25. Stream is going to end at 3:30. So we got 5 minutes. Ask those questions. And let's see what we can do here. Let me just write this down. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Stream ends. FYI, ask Q's now. All right, cool. Stephen Meredith says, thanks for the coverage. No, you're very welcome. I'm glad to cover this stuff. It's a little rough sometimes, I admit. There are some times where it's a little dry. Days like today, Jerome was definitely not himself. He wasn't. I mean, that was very obvious that Jerome was not himself. This is not a man. That is not a man. I'm just throwing it out there. That is definitely not a man. I'm just putting it all on out there, you know. Rate cuts, it didn't sound like he was too interested in rate cuts. Just throwing it out there. He didn't seem too interested at all in talking about cuts. JP going to short the housing market. Oh, man, I could see that happening. Yeah, rate cuts not anytime soon. This is not a dude. This is a chick. I'm just letting everyone know out there. It is chick. She is married, so there you go. There's the action on that for those of you that are curious. I see a ring right there. Market overall digested the news pretty well. You did see a little bit of pump action on that. It was cool. It was a cool stream, just a little bit drier than most, with a little bit more at ease, JP, than most. Christopher Perez says, what helps crypto? Rates up or down? Rates going down. Rates going down makes money cheaper. When money is cheaper, you can take more risk. She is not handsome. She's pretty. Handsome is for men, Steve. She is pretty. Yeah, so lower rates, better for crypto, because then the laggards would be able to get financial support on the risky end. Again, she is not handsome. Yeah, CNBC celebrating the CPI number. That is crazy, because for real, 3.5 to 3.4 to 3.3, that's nothing to be excited about. The last several months, I mean, no, like the last year basically has just been in the threes, and we don't want that kind of crap. We just don't. It's CPI data has just sucked. Inflation has sucked. But we all know that because we pay these high prices. You know what I mean? We're paying a lot for food when we go grocery shopping. Our utility bills are crazy. Cars are still expensive. You know what I'm saying? So, like, yeah, things are still very, very, very expensive out there. Trick says, catch you on the next one. Be lucky. Thank you very much, Trick, for the support. Thank you very much for the emails as well, sir. You know I've got quite a bit of burning to do and quite a bit of more chainsaw work to do to get the yard looking pretty. We're going to be ending the stream here in a couple minutes, so hit me up with your questions, and then we will be going. I'll hang out with chat as always. Oh, and make sure before you leave, say goodbye to each other in the chat. If you don't mind, hit the like button on the way out. Notification bell if you want to catch stuff right away. What other announcements do I have to make? I'm still tired. Couple muscle relaxers. I got a lot to do. Coconut Monkey says, later, Klaus, I got to take a dump in place of the market after that show. Oh, burned. Burned on the old market. Dump. Yeah, it wasn't what we were hoping for. CPI data just kind of sucked. It was way too high. That's the reality. Today's big story is CPI data was just way too high at 3.3. Housing just way too high. Christopher Perez says, how long until the next Powell meeting? The next contract is July 31st, everyone. July 31st. So make sure you set your calendars because you know I'll be having a live stream for that event. Stephen Meredith says, nice to see some green screen, but still low. Need to run to the station. It'll be back again soon. Yeah, train keeps coming back to the station, man. Certain things are moving, certain things aren't. Look at Toncoin is coming back. B&B still above 600. Daryl I90 says, appreciate your content, Klaus. Keeps everything grounded and balanced with the moonshot content out there. I greatly appreciate that, Daryl. Ashley says, love and respect. Everyone enjoy your day, evening. I'm currently cooking dinner. Ooh, Ashley, you're starting early unless you're making something really, really nice. So that's very cool of you. Yeah, we're going to all be hanging out. But right now what I'm going to do is I am going to play a little bit of tunage for you all. Give me a second here. I'll play some tunage, hang out with you in the chats. Please make sure you say goodbye to everyone. And thank you, everyone, for everything. I want some music. Volume on.
Whip up my ass.